Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jono White. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We are an Australian-based consultancy that works with leaders around the world, and our passion is to invest in people to become everything they're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. The goal of this podcast is to invest in you and your leadership. If you're just joining us for the first time, then feel free to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, the most popular being our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from around the world in all different sectors give their in-depth answers on leadership, what books they love, what they found most challenging, the most meaningful stories, how they structure their time through the day. That's free, so go and check it out. And we'd love to interview you about your leadership. I believe you have advice from your experience, your context, and your life so far that is important and can help other leaders. It's also a great way to give back. It's free to get involved, and you can do so by going to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or just Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form that pops up. We have a free resource for you on our website. It's called Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook. It has interviews with 10 world-class leaders, and you can go to consultclarity.org. It's right at the top, and get that today. We also have a daily email that we send out to over 15,000 leaders, and that email contains the highlights, our best content from our podcasts, our blog, my book, the books that we're loving that are out there about leadership. It's also the best way to get access to our masterclasses and workshops before anyone else. And there's also exclusive and limited special options just for subscribers. And you can subscribe by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe. Now, my gift to you is to work incredibly hard to provide the best leadership content I can to invest in you and your leadership. So if you're finding our content helpful, if you find this podcast helpful, then your gift to me could be this. If you do find it helpful, then write a review or rate our content and make sure you subscribe or follow. I can't emphasize enough how helpful that is. It really does help us to get the word out there so we can invest in more leaders to become everything they're meant to be. It also means a lot to me personally when people like you and people in our community share our content on social media. So if you do that, then please do look for me, Jono White, to tag me, and look to tag Clarity on whatever platform you're on. And our team, including me, I'm always looking to see when people have mentioned us so that I can engage with you. And also we look at sharing content. So if you write something about something we've done, there's also a good chance we'll share that with our followers. So if you could do that, that is a massive, massive help as we try to invest in as many leaders as we can around the world. Last of all, you can check out my book about how to deal with difficult people even if you hate conflict. It's called Step Up or Step Out. It's available on Amazon. You can just look up Step Up or Step Out Jono White, or you can go to store.consultclarity.org/book and check it out there. I have coached leader after leader after leader, and in more than 50% of the sessions, this topic comes up. How do I deal with this person? I'm finding it really difficult, and I just want to find a way that doesn't blow up to just to have a difficult conversation, to lead them better. How do I do that? There's a 3-step process that I outline in this book that I believe can help you. Okay, let's get into today's episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. I am really, really excited about today's guest. Jordan Harbinger is a Wall Street lawyer turned podcast interviewer with an approachable style and a knack for securing high-profile guests. His show, The Jordan Harbinger Show, was selected as part of Apple's Best of 2018. There's probably about another 5 minutes of things I could read, but let's hear from the man himself. Jordan, thank you so much for coming on. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
To start off, for listeners who may not know you, can you give people a bit of a window into your world right now? What are you doing, and what does it look like to be Jordan Harbinger today?
Sure, yeah. I run the Jordan Harbinger Show. It's actually one of the largest shows in the world right now, which is pretty cool. I've been doing that for about just under 15 years. And I interview brilliant people and make their wisdom available to everyone. That's the idea, anyway.
Amazing. And the Leadership Conversations podcast is all about giving leaders a chance to pull up a chair and have a listen to your story. So I guess for you, particularly as a leader, and I love John Maxwell's idea around leadership, that leadership is influence. And that's what I love about you, because there's a lot of leaders listening who might be in a role, but I look at you and I see how much influence you've had and you're having in many different spheres. And I love that, and that makes me go, wow, this guy is leading and influencing people. So tell us a bit of your story, particularly any moments around a passion to influence people as you look back over your life. Feel free to go back as far as you want, that really shaped you to become the Jordan that you are today.
Yeah, look, in the beginning, I just started learning this stuff for networking purposes, and then I started using it in my dating life because, as one does when you're in your 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
But after a while, I realized, these superpowers, if you will, of influence or persuasion, it's not about being slick or anything like that. But the very dumbest thing you can do with great influence is sort of waste it on yourself. So I wanted to help other people learn these kinds of skills, but also use them to better their careers and their organizations and their families and things like that. So that's the sort of the genesis of the Jordan Harbinger Show, was making sure that other people, these amazing people I have on the show, from Kobe Bryant to Ray Dalio or Mark Cuban, I wanted those people to be able to address my audience, because it just seemed a little bit, look, being selfish makes sense in your 20s, 30s, whatever, because that's just how a lot of people are. But I like to think I grew out of that, and it made me sort of pivot my whole business/life.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I resonate with that around the Leadership Conversations podcast, because I sit back and, similar to you, I do a lot of listening to other people's stories and their wisdom. And then I think, oh man, I feel like I'm learning the most out of anyone. I'm like listener number one. And it's such a rich experience for me. And I feel like listeners get so much more out of hearing their stories. So yeah, I love that approach. I'm interested to know, when you were younger, and you might have shared some of this publicly before. Um, do you remember a moment, like the Jordan as a kid or growing up, where I always hear leaders talk about that moment where you look around and you realize, oh wow, I'm actually doing. I've just naturally started leading this little community in my school. Or for me, my niece, who's 7 years old, was over the other day, and we're playing a game, and she's like hiring and firing people, and I'm looking at her, and she has no idea. I'm going, wow, what are you going to do when you grow up? Because that's not normal. Like, she's hiring and firing people in her little imaginary game. What about for you? Do you remember any moments when you were younger where you think, yeah, that was a moment where I guess I was influencing and shaping things, and probably didn't realize it at the time?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was always kind of a bossy kid. Some of my friends didn't like it after a while, but I also had a lot of influence growing up because I was always taking charge, and it was like, hey, I want to do this thing. Do you want to come along? Or I want to learn about this thing, or I learned about this thing. Let me teach everyone else. So early on, if I really look back, I did teach a lot of my friends a lot of new skills or about new things. And some of it, ended up in mischief, as it does when you're a kid, but a lot of it turned out to be really useful, and I did learn a lot early on about other people by doing things that probably weren't, strictly legal. I used to tap phone calls when I was a kid by tapping into people's phone lines and things like that and listening to their conversations. So I got an early education in what it was like to be an adult and face adult problems, not because I had them, but because I had a sort of uncensored front row seat to other people's conversations because I was illegally listening to their phone calls. So, when you're a kid, you kind of initially, when you're a kid, adults are like people who drive you places and tell you to do your homework, and they're your teachers and your parents, but they're never really three-dimensional adults. And I remember sort of a few watershed moments in my life where that changed. And one was the wiretapping thing, where I overheard somebody going through a divorce, and I heard him talking to his soon-to-be ex and his mother, and then also his sister, and then his friends, and he was like a different person with each of those people. And you may have had an experience like this. Once, I think I was in sixth grade, one of our teachers on the last day of school, she started crying in class because she was going through a divorce, and she
Mm.
told us all about it. And it was like 2020 hindsight, kind of inappropriate, but also totally made sense. And we all kind of felt bad for her. And so there's just few of those moments when you're that age where you're like, adults also have problems. This is amazing, right? It's really sort of an eye-opening thing. I not only had that realization, but then I got like gritty details from some of these phone conversations. And so that really gave me an insight into the mind that I just kind of never, and an interest into the mind that really never went away.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and I completely remember looking at adults the same way as you described it when you're little, and then having that aha moment that adults actually have real problems. And uh, for you, as I guess fast forwarding to what you're doing now, and like I said, having such influence. Um, There'd be leaders listening who are ticking heaps of boxes in terms of leadership. They're managing people really well. They're leading with vulnerability. They've really learnt a lot about how to hire great people and keep great people. But influencing and getting their ideas out there might be something that they're completely scratching their heads on. I'd love to hear your sort of advice. What would you say if you're sitting one on one with a leader who's leading a great organization, but going, Jordan, how do I sort of get our ideas out there? What would you say to them?
I'm not sure I'm an expert in that area. I would say that it's very difficult to get someone's idea if you or get their input, frankly, if there's not a certain level of trust. And again, I'm no expert in that in the organizational field, but what I've found is that a lot of leaders will say, I just want honest feedback. And what they mean is, I want people to agree with me publicly.
Yeah,
They don't really want honest feedback. They punish people who give honest feedback, even if it's not obvious, like, oh, we're demoting you. It's like, maybe if the office brown noser is getting ahead, everyone around you knows that you don't really want honest feedback. You want a yes man. And
wow.
so you have to really focus on your actions and the way that things look to others, as opposed to these sort of mottos that come out of corporate afternoon training sessions with a consultant. You see this all the time, and you hear about it all the time, where it's like some boss gets out of a training and is like, all right, we're going to do this now. And everyone's like, oh, great. The revamped management thing of the week is now we're doing this. And
Yes.
that doesn't work. You need to have that trust with the people under you. And the way that you do that is through long-term, consistent um, behaviors, and not like you got inspired by watching a YouTube video or listen to a podcast. It doesn't work. It's like going to the gym to get fit. You don't go once and you're like, well, took care of that. It's a consistency thing. And I hear this a lot. Leaders will say, or people who are in organizations will say, why doesn't my organization trust me? Or why can't we get good ideas out there? Or like, why aren't people putting their own feedback in? And it's like, all right, if we really dig deep, you find that, well, this other person who kind of looked like they did that, they rubbed the leader the wrong way. They ended up leaving the company or getting pushed out of the company. And it's like, nobody wants to sign up for that. It's easier to keep your head down. And so you have to be
Yeah.
really careful about that. You have to be very careful about that as a leader. It's not about like a trick or tactic to get people to give honest feedback or put their ideas out there. It's making sure that it's safe for them to put their ideas out there.
That's amazing advice, and I think you're right. I love what you said about the brown noser and looking at them and saying, if they're getting ahead, then everyone knows you're not real about saying you want authentic feedback. What you want
Hmm.
is a yes man. I think that's a wonderful filter for leaders to think about. What about for entrepreneurs? We have leaders across the spectrum, on our sort of listening in, and I'm interested to know for you as an entrepreneur, and really, I'm looking at what you're doing, and you're incredibly successful. What have you found? I guess for you, what have you found most challenging as an entrepreneur? The last, the past. Well, it's been a while now. You've been doing what you've been doing in various things. But what have you found most challenging as an entrepreneur?
Well, candidly, I think, recruiting talent is always very tough. Um, there's a lot
Yeah.
of people out there that are not good at anything. and I say that sort of tongue in cheek. Of course, those people are good at something, but there's a lot of people that come into organizations that can talk a really big game, but they really can't put their money where their mouth is, or they can't do it consistently. They get really excited for a couple of weeks on the job or a couple of months on the job, and then they move on. And as a leader for a while, I was like, oh, this is on me. And I realized after a lot of reps here, there are some people that really do deliver what they say, and those people are very few and far between. And there's a lot of people that are a lot of talk. And, again, I used to blame myself for this, but my team hasn't changed pretty much at all for, let's see, 5 or 6 years now, at least. And that doesn't even mean, and that is like me adding one person during that time, who is a superstar that's been with us the whole time. I mean, I can go back and look at the last 7 years and it's pretty static. So I think that's a good enough track record where I can say, well, it's probably not my management style pushing people in and out because I don't really have any out, at least not from people leaving us. I would say willingly. There's a lot of people who have failed to deliver on what they've promised. And so that to me has been very, very tricky. I don't worry about it anymore. I have everything that I need, but I would say to people who are leaders, trying to find that needle in a haystack, there's something to be said for nurturing talent, but also you got to set boundaries. And I think, leaders, the old sort of maxim that good help is hard to find, it's that for a reason. Nurturing talent is one thing, but I think people who are going into a situation, I know we have to sell ourselves to get jobs, to get clients, to get contracts, but we have to be really careful about that because there's so many people willing to just tell people what they want to hear. It will backfire if you are not honest, because you can do a bang up job in something, and if it's not what you promised, because you promised something that's literally impossible or outside the realm of expectation, you're going to run into consequences. And that's a big problem. I hire contractors all the time.
Yeah.
And the ones that do well are the ones that say, realistically, I can probably do this, and this, but I'm not sure about this, and this. They'll work out a lot better, even if they're delivering a lower sort of target than someone who goes, I can crush all of these things and then fails to do so. It's like, well, all right. One person lied about or was mistaken, grossly mistaken about what they could deliver. And the other person was much more candid, but delivered a little bit lower. I'd rather have that person because I can plan for that. I don't want to have to guess what you're actually going to do.
Yeah, so true. Do you have, I guess from your time leading, and like you said, you've had such a solid team the past 6 or 7 years, which I think is the fruit of doing this really well. But as you look back, are there any stories where you feel like you or the person really dropped the ball that comes to mind as oh man, like that was an absolute crazy sort of moment, or where you really got it right and nailed finding someone or getting someone and looking at them and they were happy, but you managed to bring them on board and they've stayed with you ever since? Any stories around that?
Sorry, you just cut off at the end of your sentence there. Not sure why.
Oh, sorry about that. I was just asking if there are any stories around either losing.
Yeah, I heard. Okay, I wasn't sure I heard the end. Yeah, I would say there are definitely, when I look back like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever in my career, some of my other businesses and things like that, I look at times where I would hire like the only person who seemed to want to do the job. And then I would be surprised when they did a terrible job, or I'd hire I was like, I don't want to pay more than X dollars for this. So I'd hire some, literal kid who's probably like 24, 26 at the time, never had a real job. And I'm like, okay, here's your big project that you're totally unqualified to do. And I'd come back, a week later, how's this going? Well, I haven't really managed to, but I'm playing a lot of Warcraft. And I'd be like, this idiot. And I'd get so mad at them and, can them or penalize them, dock their pay. And then I realized, well, I'm expecting a cat to bark like a dog here. This is a kid. They're not going to be capable of creating this big learning system that I had in mind. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous to think that they would. This person is lazy. They don't have it. They need to be micromanaged. They don't want to be managed at all. They read the 4-hour work week. Their idea is to work as little as possible. We're a startup. That's not going to work. Like, that's obvious, right. Like cultural mismatch. And, it's banging against your head against the wall and sort of being surprised when you don't get the results you wanted. That's at some point, that's your fault, right? Like
Yeah.
it goes in hand with you mentioned before, I'm going to recommend a book, but at some point it's like, that's your fault
Mm.
for asking somebody to do something that literally they'd have no ability to do. You could hold their hand the whole time. They probably still wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I guess so. Say hypothetically, something happened around the Jordan Harbinger show where you had some venture capitalist or someone comes along and it's an awesome opportunity, but it means you need to overnight go and hire 10 more superstars to do X, Y, or Z. How would you go about doing that if you had to bring on a bunch of new people and go and find great talent in the market right now?
Right now, I'd ask my existing superstars to recommend people because
Mm,
it's not a rule, but if I put a job out there, I'm going to get 7 billion applications back.
yeah,
But if I ask for referrals from people that I trust, when I say my superstars, it doesn't even have to be people that work here. Those would be the
yeah,
best people to request from. But there's also going to be people that I just know who are really good. I'm going to put my feelers out to my network and say, this is what I'm looking for. Because most people in my network, of course, they're going to be conscious of their own reputation. They're not going to recommend somebody who they just happen to know is unemployed. That's not going to be a good look for them.
yeah,
So I'm going to want a referral. I'm going to want a warm introduction because that is
yeah.
always, always, always the best way to find the best people. The other thing I'm going to do is pay above market because superstars know that they are worth more than their colleagues because they have worked before and they go,
Yeah.
gosh, I'm the one towing the entire weight around here. I'm basically doing the entire project for my division. My manager is more or less useless. The other 3 people in the department are mailing it in.
Yeah.
They know that. Whether they might be too humble to admit it, but they know that. And so when they're looking for a new project, they're going to be looking to get compensated for that. And as a business owner, I understand it. When you run a restaurant and need a bunch of line cooks, you pay X dollars an hour because that's market in your area. If I want to get something done and it's like a very important opportunity, I'm
Mm,
going to overpay because I want the best talent. I live in Silicon Valley. That's how it works here. There's
yeah.
a reason Facebook is paying more than, I don't know, Oracle. One, they have
Mm,
to now because their reputation sucks. But two, they want the best people in whatever niche it is. And they can't get them if they're like, oh, yeah, well, we're paying the same as everyone else, except for you get to look at Mark Zuckerberg going to and from his car. Lucky you. No, it's about, if you woo them with a mission, but then it's like, these people can up and leave, especially if they're really talented. So
yeah.
pay through the nose. Money is not what you're trying to optimize for here.
Yeah, yeah. That's such good advice. And it reminds me, I literally have a local business that I noticed always has great staff. And I asked some of them one time, I was like, I'm not trying to poach you anywhere else, but where did you guys find out? Just because I kept noticing they've got like lots of different locations. And every time I'm there, they just have excellent people. And I just asked some of the staff and they said, oh, they don't put job ads out. They just ask us to refer friends. And it's so funny. They're just like a
Mhm.
little local in Brisbane, like a bunch of different locations, but it's exactly the same sort of idea that you said there. Get superstars who work for you or in your network to refer people, and then be willing to pay through the nose.
Exactly. And of course, they're going to get along. You're not going to get some weird cultural fit because your head server recommended her roommate who she's lived with for 3 years that works at a different restaurant. So they're going to work well together, probably,
Yeah,
or at least better than some other person who comes in and is like a total train wreck. You want that kind of thing. And since their reputation is on the line, they don't want to bring in somebody who's terrible because they actually care. They're going to have to see that person every day. So if they refer somebody and that person stops showing up, it makes them look bad. They're not going to want to risk that. When you get a job, especially you're talking about a place that has like food service or other entry level jobs. Turnover is huge in part because, a lot of the high school kids, college kids here in the United States doing that,
yeah,
it's hard enough to find somebody who's going to care about that. So you really do have to find professionals. And the way you do that is you say, hey, I know you make $100 a day over at this bar. What about $125 a day? And also, we will never put you on one of your days off without you giving us explicit permission, or some other sort of benefit where that says, we actually care that you have a life outside of work, and we're not going to jerk you around. And, in the United States, we have like benefits issues, and I can't remember where they start. It's something like you got to work 40 hours a week. So there's stories galore on Reddit of like
Mm.
restaurants or whatever it is, or major chains putting people on 35 hours a week so they don't have to pay benefits. And nothing says I don't give a crap about my employees and my team like making sure they can't get health care or
Yeah.
something along those lines. So you have to really be, what I've noticed, and I don't know if this is just a US thing,
Mm.
there's this whole sort of, we're one big family over here at Jordan Harbinger Farms. Come work with us. And what family means is we're going to ask ridiculous things of you all the time, but it's because we're family. But the second you need something like, hey, things aren't going well for me, I need some time off, that old family thing goes out the freaking window. And then suddenly you're out on your ass. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I thought we were family. Yes, we're the kind of family where we have you do things for us, but as soon as you need something from us, it's F you. And that's what a lot of times that actually means. So I would almost say, as a job tip, beware of never put "we're a big family" in your ad, in your job application or your ad, because it's going to
Yep.
sound like that to a lot of people, and also it's not freaking true. And if you see that in a job ad, don't necessarily assume that they mean you're going to be treated well. Some families are highly dysfunctional, and usually they're the ones where in the job application it says we're going to treat you like family. They don't mean like your family. They mean like a family you wouldn't want to be a part of most of the time.
That's so good. I love it. Well, let's just to sort of land the plane today, Jordan. Let's jump into Leadership Express. I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions. You ready?
Sure.
What's a book that you've gifted a lot to other people?
I've gifted this book called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I'm sure people have talked about it on your show before, but it's great. When I mentioned it before, or when I mentioned before that, at some point you making XYZ mistake is your fault, that's what
Mm.
extreme ownership is all about. It's, okay, maybe this person did steal from you. They're a bad person. Why? What part of this is your fault / in
Mm.
your control? Oh, well, we didn't run background checks on our cash handling staff. Okay, so that's something you can change. You can't change that creepy criminals are applying to your stuff. So you look up and down the chain, or
Mm.
especially at yourself, for what you can own. And so, like I said, with that guy I hired a long time ago who was just a kid and couldn't get anything done, that was actually my fault. Yes, he was useless. Why did he make it that far in my
Mm.
hiring process and in my organization? Well, that's on me.
Yeah, great recommendation and great advice. What's a time management or productivity tip or a tool or resource you use?
I live by my calendar, and a lot of people go, no, I mean like a fancy thing. No, don't ask about a fancy thing. I never allow people to do that, because I go, what's on your calendar for the day? And there's like one or two things on there, and it's a phone call, and the rest of it's blank. My
Mm.
day is planned out in little increments. Everything from basically when I wake up to the end of the workday, in any case, is blocked
Yep.
off. And what that does is it makes sure that I have time to do everything, because it doesn't say, I don't have a to-do list that says, do all your emails. I have an hour for email in the morning. And
Yes.
when that hour is up, it doesn't matter if I'm at zero inbox,
Yep.
I stop doing email. And so I get more done in one day than most people do in the better part of their week. And the
Mm.
reason is because everything is planned out. I don't have to think about what to do next on a daily basis. I just look at my calendar, and it's probably been there for 2 weeks already. And people go, well, there's no flexibility in that. Yes, there is. I build the flexibility in there. I might make a 90-minute lunch. And so if something has to run over, or I have to go run some errand or get a phone call in, well, I can do it during that time. And then I still
Yes.
have time for lunch. So I don't ever have this like, oh my gosh, I've got to eat and be on a conference call and be driving. That literally never happens to me, because I plan better.
Yeah, that's amazing. Speaking of advice, what's a great piece of advice you've received at some point?
Ooh, good question. A good piece of advice that I've received at some point. I mean, it's probably one of those old like Oprah cliches where it's like, when people show you who they are, believe them. I've routinely sort of given people another chance, or another chance here, or believed an excuse about something. And it's like, well, no, your actions were pretty clear. You are kind of a, POS. I should have paid closer attention. And I had business partners for a while that were just candidly like kind of crappy people that were never going to succeed. And I towed them along for a long time. And one of the reasons that I did that was I believed a lot of the nonsense. Instead of just looking at their track record as humans and being like, oh, yeah, scoreboard says you're never going to do what it takes to be successful. I should just bounce. So I stayed in that business for a really, really long time. And then when I left, it was kind of funny because they were like, you're never going to succeed on your own. You couldn't possibly redo all these things we've done and blah, blah. And then within like 8 months, I'd already had my business where that old business was after 11 years in terms of like gross revenue. And so that told me everything I need. And now we're like, 20 times the size. So that told me everything I needed to know about how long I stayed in that business.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, just to wrap things up, where can people find you? You've already mentioned the show, but can you just mention that again and anything right now that you're particularly passionate about that people can jump into and find about you, Jordan?
Sure, yeah, the Jordan Harbinger Show, HARB as in boy, IN as in Nancy, GER, the Jordan Harbinger Show, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your pods, or jordanharbinger.com. I'm just stoked about growing my show. It's one of the, we were number 20 for most downloaded show in the United States in December, so that was kind of cool. I'm just excited about that. I've got a new baby who's a month old, so I
Wow.
am restructuring my work schedule so that I can spend lots of time with my kids. So I'm done by 4 or 4:30 every weekday because my son comes back from school and I'm like, I'm just going to not do any other work and play with my kid. And I never met anybody that regretted spending too much time with their kids. So I just decided to start early and do that. He's only about 3. So that's what I'm excited. That's what gets
Oh,
me in the
I
morning.
love that. That's
I know your
amazing.
audience doesn't care, but
No,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
great.
it is nice.
Yeah, that's
I'm glad that I'm doing
congratulations.
it. But I would say the thing that your audience actually cares about is scaling the Jordan Harbinger Show, and the guests that I have on are also they light me up. It never feels like work.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I know that's always what leaders talk about is family. I just want to say a massive thank you to you, Jordan, for coming on the show, and also to our listeners. Don't forget you can check out the leadership question of the day, where I put a stone in your shoe around leadership, and the John O'White Leadership Podcast. There are a couple of other podcasts we have, but I just want to finish by saying thank you, Jordan, for coming on, and it's been a joy, and just one of the highlights of my month having you on here. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, man. Really appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast as much as I did. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, including our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from all over the world in all different roles, in different industries, answer these 7 questions on leadership, and leaders give these in-depth answers around how they spend their time, a book that's been significant for them. It's just a gold mine. It's completely free to access, so go to consultclarity.org and look for that. We'd also love to interview you about your leadership. I believe your experience, your life, your context means that you have advice on leadership that other leaders can learn from. Yes, you, if you're going, not me, well, no, I really believe you would have something to add. So if you're looking for a way to give back, it's completely free to get involved. And we would love to interview you through the 7 Questions on Leadership. You just go to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form and get involved. We have a free resource on our website called the Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook, 10 world-class leaders giving their thoughts on leadership, and that's completely free. It's available on our homepage, consultclarity.org, right at the top, so make sure you go and get that and download it today. And we have a free daily email that you can subscribe to. We send this out to over 15,000 leaders from around the world. And it contains the highlights of content from our podcasts, our blogs, our books we're reading. It's got the best content. and it gives you exclusive, limited, early access to our masterclasses, workshops, new products, special offers. It's all for our subscribers. You can go to consultclarity.org/subscribe and join 15,000 other leaders. And my gift to you is to work really hard, particularly through the Leadership Conversations podcast. I have been blown away by the quality of the leaders, and I'm learning as much as anyone in doing these interviews. So I'm having a great time. And my gift to you is to keep lining up the best leaders I can to invest in your leadership. Your gift to me, if you're finding this helpful, there is something that you could do that would help us out massively. And that is to write a review and to leave a rating for our podcast or wherever you're watching or listening to this. I can't tell you how much that helps us out. Also, subscribe or follow. It really does make a difference in helping us to help more leaders become everything they're meant to be. Another thing that means a lot to me personally is when I see our community share our content. So if you do share this or any other piece of content on social media, then thank you, and please do that. And look for me, John O'White, or Clarity, and tag us in your post. Our team is always looking for posts to engage with from our community, and there's also a chance that we'll share your content to go beyond and share it with our followers. Last of all, you can check out my book. It's called Step Up or Step Out: How to Deal with Difficult People Even If You Hate Conflict. I wrote this book because 50% of the coaching sessions I have with leaders, this topic comes up again and again and again. And it's this idea of, how do I have this difficult conversation? How do I lead this person better when I'm finding them difficult? Or in some cases, you look and you say, I think I might be leading a difficult person. They're just quite difficult to lead, or I'm finding them quite difficult to lead. So there's a 3-step process that I unpack in Step Up or Step Out. And the amazing thing, and I've literally done this myself, and I've heard it anecdotally from other leaders as I've coached them, is that if you follow this process, you will see that person step up and change their behavior or make a decision, which is to step out some of the time. 95% of the time, people will step up or step out in just 4 weeks. And I stand by that. It's you have to read the book to understand, but I really do believe in it, and I've experienced it firsthand. It works. So you can go to Amazon, look up Step Up or Step Out John O'White, or store.consultclarity.org/book. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode next time of the Leadership Conversations podcast. And I hope today has helped you to take another step towards becoming the leader you're meant to be. See you next time.